Guys, I had an interesting conversation earlier with my buddy Ryan. And here was the question that Ryan was asking. He said, why are big fights identified exclusively through pay per view sales? And I thought, gee, Ryan, that's a dumb question because it's quantifiable and factual and they don't lie. How else would you define what a big fight is? But it got us talking, and I'm starting to see things more Ryan's way because Ryan's going, well, hold on a second. You're saying big fight, does that have to be money driven? Why can it not be significance based? And that is a totally different conversation. I mean, you'll have the Olympic Games, by example, where everything is on the line. You're representing your country. You got one crack. It comes along every 4 years. I mean, just the limitations that it has itself will add to the importance and the significance, and that wouldn't even be on pay-per-view, for example. And then if you do juxtapose that with, say, what we saw this weekend with Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson goes out and he brings in over 1 million buys, which is a monster number. Now, that is not going to go down as one of boxing's biggest fights ever. That will easily go down as boxing's biggest fight of the year. And don't forget, Tyson Fury fought Deontay Wilder this year. Mike Tyson's numbers crushed those numbers. Triple G versus Canelo sequel was on DAZN and did a reported 400,000 buys. It was north or south of that, and I can't think off the top of my head. That's a good number. DAZN did a great night of business. Mike Tyson's return did over twice. So if you do listen to what Ryan's saying, which is, so you're telling me that Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones was the biggest fight of the year? I would go, well, no, of course not. It was just for fun. And he goes, yeah, but Chael, you said that the biggest fight of the year is directly related to the pay-per-view number. Do you see the problem? Do you see where Ryan's right? Where we might have to change the way we speak? I mean, we do talk about the biggest fight. And historically speaking, until we got into this entertainment era or even the oddness of what we're going through with the pandemic in 2020, historically speaking, some of the most significant fights were the biggest fights. They were hand in hand, but they're not anymore. And I think that's the point Ryan was trying to make. And I think he's right. If I was to look back at the biggest heavyweight fight of all time, at a point in time, it was Spinks versus Tyson, which I believe was in 1989. But they were both undefeated. Spinks had moved into the division as the lightweight champion of the world. Spinks was the Olympic gold medalist. Mike Tyson had not made the Olympic team, but set the pros on fire. I mean, there was a lot of significance as to why they needed to compete and as to who was going to be ranked where, most exclusively, who was going to be called champion, because there could be only one. And you had this debate between these two. You saw that same debate come in between Evander Holyfield and Mike Tyson, by example. Or you saw the Four Horsemen, the true Four Horsemen. Leonard, Hearns, Hagler, Duran. It was those four guys, but which one? So they got to go out and get in this four-way round robin and try to figure this whole thing out. And they were all beating one another. I mean, it's just one of these deals where the significance does match up with the pay-per-view buys, but it's not true now. It's not. Particularly if you look at what Mike did, and we're going to go, yeah, Mike Tyson versus Roy Jones. Boy, that's one of the biggest fights of the decade. Well, no. No, there was other things that drove it, wasn't there? I mean, to Ryan's point, it wasn't the significance. It wasn't about titles. It wasn't about championships. It wasn't about lineage. But it was fun. It was interesting. Not usually why we would buy a fight. Not what moves the fight industry forward. Not a plan that's sustainable. But it still happened. It's very interesting in that regard. Look at Logan Paul. For example, there's not going to be a significance on a fight that he does or a fight that he's already had. They weren't for Olympic gold medals. There wasn't pride of country. There wasn't sanctioning by the IBF or the IBA or the WBC or the WBO. I mean, for example, that put belts on the line. But there was something there. There's a journey that Paul is on right now, and he's brought the fans along. Here is my journey. I don't have to do this. I want to do this. I get to do this. I'm going to pursue it. I'm going to let you guys come and watch it. Totally different story. Again, not sustainable, not one that the industry as a whole could piggyback and copy and move forward. But we're in a different time. It's a different time, and we want to be entertained, and there's nothing wrong with that. We're not wrong for that. There's a resentment within the industry right now for how well, say, Paul is doing or how well Tyson Jones did. There's a resentment where guys are coming out and saying, but look at all the things that I have done. Look at the sacrifice that I have done. Why am I not getting those numbers? I'm not saying it's fair, and I wouldn't even attempt to answer the question. You get the answer as well as I do. Articulating it's a little bit hard. We understand everything you've done. We're not interested in you as of right now. Sorry. Rude, cold-hearted. There's your answer. It's one of those deals. It's one of those deals where they don't totally go hand in hand, and I don't know of another time where they haven't gone hand in hand. Food for thought. But I want to ask you the same question Ryan asked me. What is more important? The pay-per-view buys or the significance, and how do we bring those two together?